Hi, just wanted to have a quick talk about something about coronavirus that you might have heard about. Exponential growth with things like social media or Ponzi schemes, another one you hear that term thrown around about. In Australia at the moment we have, I think today there was like 70 plus cases of corona. So we've got about 70 cases of this thing today. Today's what's today? The 11th of March 2020. So about a week ago, we had about 56. I haven't got the figures in front of me, but all we need to be aware of is this upward trend. Each day we're getting more cases than we had previously. Now, when something has exponential growth, it produces this upward trend that turns into like an infinity curve. A bit like this, for example. Yeah, we go along, start getting up and up and up, and then it massively starts to not double so much, but like it's doubling. Yeah. Get to this point here, where the amount of cases per day looks like it's never going to end. Of course, it does end because there's only a finite number of people. You can't grow exponentially forever because you can't infect people who don't exist. So what happens with these things is if you think in terms of binary, for example, imagine we have one infection today, then the next day we have 2, and the next day we would have 4, and then 8, and 16, 32, and 64, 128, 256, etc., etc. People who know base 2 are familiar with that pattern. But it goes from, in very short number of steps, we go from having a small number of cases to a very large number of cases. Now, I'm not sure if this number here might be higher than 70 at the moment. I'm not quite sure. Let's say it's 70. So for us, we are in this upward. Our pattern is the trend is lifting up towards here. So what we probably expect to see in the next few days is that this distance between the number of cases here will shorten. So we might get to 80 cases in half as many days. We might get to 100 cases in half as many days again. So what's happening is that each person who's contracted the virus there's the potential for them to spread amongst their contact circle, So if this is you over here and you have 10 people around you, then all 10, there's a potential for you to transmit that to these people. And let's say the transmission rate is 1 in 10, let's say. So for every 10 of your friends, you have pass on to one person. Same thing happens to this person here. They have 10 people around them, and 1 happens there. We step through this thing here. If we have 2, it's quite horrifying what happens. But yeah, this person here was the source, transmitting it to the second person through here. And 2 of his friends get it. 2 of their friends get it. 2 of the friends of the friends, and all of a sudden you go from a small number to a very big number of cases very quickly. I think probably the best analogy for people is to think about what happens in social media. We all heard the term a viral success or viral campaign. You might have seen a video, you thought it was very funny, you share that with all your friends. Most things you share, they won't then share on to other people. So it doesn't spread very far from you as the source. When things are very successful, you might have 10% of your friends sharing it on, and then for each one of those individuals that did share it, they have 10% of their friends, and depending on the amount of people we're talking about, can spread very fast into millions. It's also referred to as the 6 degrees of separation, if you've ever heard that before. This idea that through just general connections you can connect yourself to every other person on the planet. In many cases it's quite easy. You might think, oh well, I can't have possibly had a contact with royalty or something like that. Well, if you've ever met someone that's famous, then you're probably only three connections away from that. Makes you think about the world a much smaller place than what it really is. So here in Australia, though, I think we need to be cautious and optimistic. Hopefully we don't get to a situation where we are finding hundreds and then thousands of cases every day. Hopefully we can stop that kind of spread. If we get to a situation where we have thousands of new cases every day, it's out of control. Then lockdown and these kind of restrictions are a real possibility in certain cities, I would say, in certain areas in particular, as we've seen overseas. So what we're hoping that we get to, though, is maybe a point in the next week or 2 weeks where we can stop this spread, this kind of transition between people, and then taper it off. So rather than finding X number of new cases that day, we can get to a point where we start to find less cases. And it tapers back towards this way here. So this exponential curve, what normally happens is that you see this slow uptake starts to get rolling, and then it blows up very quickly, almost doubling in halving the time. But then it gets to a point around the middle and then starts to arc away from this where we don't have the supply to create new cases. Because at some point, an infected person's going to be surrounded by everyone around them's already infected. So they can't transmit new things to them. And if there's only one person in that circle that hasn't had the infection, they can't transmit as easily as well. So you end up with sort of a door-stopping kind of effect. Hopefully we get to this point, we get to a calming off period sooner rather than later. We don't get to an Italy or a China in particular. What we can do about that is simply maintain some personal hygiene, maintain what the public health system here is telling us to do. Very basic measures against coronavirus, which I think is really, we should know this stuff by now anyway. If you have elderly people around you, then transmitting the flu to these people, just the regular flu, can be deadly. So general cleanliness, and if you are sick, proximity is obviously a good solution. But what else they're saying? Wash our hands frequently. You don't know what's on the surfaces you touch out there in the world. If you go to public places, try and avoid touching these things. Clean your hands. Use that disinfectant they have everywhere. Use that social distancing idea. Just stay away from people. You don't have to be right in someone's face all the time. Particularly if someone has those symptoms, is coughing, and avoid touching eyes, nose, and mouth. So obviously, if you've touched a contaminated material, then you don't want to be touching your face afterwards. There are lots of open orifices for the infection to get inside you. So practice respiratory hygiene. Make sure you and the people around you follow good respiratory hygiene. This means covering your mouth and nose when you blow, Yep. If you have a fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention early. Hopefully people do that. Hopefully, I'm betting that some people who contract this, and we've heard this already, that they have very mild symptoms, so they didn't think they were sick, which makes them a great candidate to be one of these people here that has it and then can transmit the disease not just to one person around them, but maybe 50% of the people they come in contact with. It's kind of scary, isn't it? Anyway, I'm sure we'll all come through this. We'll go out the other side at some point, and hopefully your business isn't affected too much. Hopefully your family isn't affected too much. Obviously, if you're a younger person, not a great time to go visit grandma and grandpa if you're sick. Stay away. Talk to them on the phone. Go for it. Rack up some phone bills, but don't put these people in jeopardy. My personal concern is actually my mum, who's quite elderly. If I contract it and then pass it on to her, and that's the end. That will be the end of her life through no fault of her own. There's something to think about. It's a sobering thing to think about. But at this point, we're at 70 cases, give or take, and hopefully we don't see this acceleration of new cases, this length between new cases shortening. So hopefully we see the next 70 cases appearing over a much longer time frame, and then less cases after that. So it's tapering off. We'll see. Thanks for watching, and sorry it was pretty incoherent. It's just what I had in my mind right now. Till next time, bye.